I'm the Associate Director of the MBA program, and I'm also an alumna of the MBA, having graduated in 2013 from our Boston campus. Today's webinar is all about women in business, and we're going to be discussing current trends and the advantages to having more women in business and in graduate business programs. At Hult, our women make up almost half of the student body here, and hopefully in the near future we will see a much more equal representation of male and female students in both our MBA program, with it currently at 40% female, 60% male, and then our master's programs, which are currently at 45% female and 55% male. As a business school, we are constantly striving to make Hult a place where women feel empowered. And we recognize that men and women alike need to strive for gender equality in business, as it's beneficial for all sides. The topic of women in business is one that I am passionate about, and this sentiment is shared with me by our three panelists joining us today. We have the pleasure of hearing from women who all have connections to Hult International Business School and have extensive experience navigating both graduate school and their careers as women in today's world. Our webinar will be a panel discussion, and we welcome questions from all of you tuning in. We will be sure to save time at the end of the webinar to get us to as many questions as our time will allow. So feel free to type them in the questions box as they come to you. I also want to encourage you to join along in the conversation on Twitter, where we already have some tweets. So be sure to share your thoughts with us on our Twitter feed at Hult_biz, #WomenInBiz. Joining us this evening are Tessa Misiaszek, Justine Stacey, and Rosey Singh. Tessa is a PhD, MPH, and currently the Associate Dean at Hult International Business School. Dr. Misiaszek has completed her PhD at Simmons College here in Boston and also taught in the Simmons School of Management for 5 years. She holds a Master of Public Health and a Bachelor of Science degree in Resource Economics and from the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, Mass, in Western Mass. Dr. Misiaszek brings extensive experience developing human capital strategies to improve healthcare with an emphasis on provider-patient communications. Prior to joining Hult International Business School, Dr. Misiaszek was CEO of Empathetics Incorporated, which is a company that was developed empathetic communications training for healthcare professionals, as well as a principal consultant with Korn Ferry International Company, where she worked with integrated health systems and health plans to develop diversity and inclusion strategies and broadly implement cultural competency training. Prior to Korn Ferry, Dr. Misiaszek served as COO of Quality Interactions, a company that partnered with industry executives to identify market drivers for cultural competency training and developed and implemented trainings for thousands of healthcare professionals across the United States. So Tessa teaches international marketing currently at Hult, along with entrepreneurship and organizational behavioral courses. Welcome, Tessa.
Thank you so much, Darren. I'm happy to be here. Excited to speak with everyone today.
Excellent. And up next, we also have Justine Stacey, who is a graduate of Hult's 2016 MBA class in San Francisco and currently lives in Toronto, Canada, where she works as a marketing and strategy manager for one of North America's largest financial institutions. Prior to business school, Justine traveled throughout Africa and Asia as a social entrepreneur and strategic marketer, consulting for several social impact projects, international nonprofits, and co-led a social enterprise, Girls Globe, which was funded by Johnson & Johnson. Justine has participated in and spoken at a number of global conferences as an advocate for women's health and an expert on women's economic empowerment. Although currently working on finance on Bay Street in Toronto, Justine remains passionate and involved in the fight for women's rights and economic empowerment. She continues to speak at global conferences, most recently the Global Entrepreneur Community in Kuala Lumpur, leading a roundtable on supply chain for social impact entrepreneurs, and sits on several boards and committees that focus on women's empowerment, diversity, and social justice. She strongly believes feminism is not about making women strong. They already are strong. It's about changing the way the world perceives that strength. Thank you so much for joining us, Justine.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Darren. Thank you for having me today. I'm really excited to chat with everyone and to be a part of this conversation. It's really important.
Excellent. Well, we can't wait to hear from you. And last and certainly not least is Rosey Singh, who is a Canadian-born and raised as the daughter of two immigrant parents from India. She has an unshakable appreciation for hard work and determination and is currently putting all that to the test as a current MBA student on our San Francisco campus, but just days away from graduation. Having spent over 10 years in the banking world, Rosey understands what it means to climb the corporate ladder and still have the drive to go further. She is also the president and co-founder of the Gender Equality and Leadership Club on our San Francisco campus and understands all the work that needs to be done to achieve gender balance in leadership positions. Irrespective of any challenges she has faced, they've all led her to where she is today, and more importantly, who she is. Thank you so much, Rosey, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful. Well, I would love to jump right in. We are going to be discussing a lot of things today, but I wanted to get first to some current trends and challenges that women are facing in business school and also in business in general around the world. We see a lot in the news with companies under fire. These are household names who are being brought to attention, brought to the forefront of the headlines for their maltreatment of female employees. And there's also a much greater dialogue around the gap in wage between male and female employees, and also things such as maternity leave, even paid paternity leave. So jumping right into some current trends and challenges that you all have seen in your careers or are currently seen as students or professors, I would love to start with you, Justine. Having graduated and being back in the workforce, what are some current trends that you see and some challenges that you see we're still facing today?
Yeah, I mean, I think I made a pretty big transition pre and post MBA. Prior to business school, I was working predominantly with women in women-led startups and social enterprise projects. And now sort of working in a big corporate structure in finance. Definitely, it's a lot more diverse, which is great in some ways, but very different in a lot of other ways. One thing that I think, we have a long way to go with is maternity leave and paternity leave. And another thing I think is that the equal pay. And, I think we're seeing a lot of, especially in these bigger companies, trends towards diversity and having, a head of diversity or diversity boards. And that's great, but I sometimes worry that it's a buzzword and defining what those things mean and the action that is actually being taken to make real change, to make the workplace more inclusive for women is it's not always measurable or noticeable. And I think, it starts at the bottom with people, with women and men. Men are an important part of the conversation, raising their voice and bringing these issues to the table and not backing down because they're important.
Excellent. And that is something that we're going to talk about today, is that inclusion of men in the discussion so that it isn't just women trying to negotiate and bring themselves up onto an equal level, but having the support of men as well. And Rosey or Tessa, do you have anything that you would like to share regarding trends and challenges that we see today?
Sure, I'll go ahead, and then Rosey, I'll toss it to you after, if that's okay. I agree with what Justine said completely. I think as far as trends are concerned, women are just not represented in the numbers that we should. We certainly haven't achieved even close to equality as it relates to the number of women on corporate boards, women in the C-suite. It's interesting to even see the numbers, the representation of women at Hult, and I think it's a trend along with business education. However, there are different industries that I think for different industries, women are playing a bigger role, and they're gaining more representation. Healthcare is one where, for instance, in healthcare, we are seeing nurses play a much bigger role in the governance of hospitals, and 94% of all nurses are women. So in industries like healthcare, we're starting to see some progress. But then, of course, in industries like tech, in the tech industry and other industries like that, it continues to be a challenge. And so, I'm looking forward to, on this panel, talking about strategies that we can all be thinking about to help increase those numbers. And the last thing I would just say on this topic is along the lines of what Justine said. I worked in this space around diversity and inclusion in healthcare for about 10 years. And where I saw the most progress as it related to diversity and inclusion and gender equality and having initiatives around that, where it wasn't just the politically correct thing to do, but was with organizations that actually incorporated that into their corporate strategy, because they realized that their patients or their customers really cared about these topics, and they realized that their customers, being primarily women, they could better understand those customers if they actually had more women working in areas such as marketing and in the C-suite and in finance. So it's interesting, because again, I think that was a trend I saw in healthcare, where we were seeing more strategies around diversity and inclusion and gender equality start to get more incorporated into the corporate strategy versus being siloed as the politically correct thing to do or HR. And I think we need to think about more how this can actually be part of the marketing process or the sales strategy or the corporate strategy for the company.
Amazing. Then it really courses through the veins of the entire organization and would affect everything that they're doing. And Rosey, how about you?
So, I mean, I love what both of you, Tess and Justine, have said. I think from me as a graduate in a couple of days, I think the challenges that I'm seeing is sort of how I'm approaching the job market, the job search itself, the dialogue that I'm having with myself, and sort of the questions that I'm asking with. And, I just finished a fantastic Women in Leadership course here at Hult as one of my last MBA courses. And there's a lot of stuff that came up as trends, and it really comes down to how we approach individually, how we approach, job search, negotiation of salary, or just even the type of jobs that we look for. What do we think as women we're qualified for? So do we go that extra step and ask for the position that we think we deserve, we know we deserve? Also, we had an interesting assignment where we had to speak to 5 women, or 4 to 5 women, sorry, in different emerging markets about their challenges. And so regardless of if you live in China or, India or Dubai or even in North America, we're all facing the same challenges. We all seem to have to fight for what we believe in or what we deserve. Things don't necessarily get handed to us on a silver platter and then other people on the outside might think we do, but, and to be pegged or stereotyped as sort of that, that, I don't know how, you're more masculine, or you have to be assertive, or she's not assertive, she's actually bitchy. So these are the challenges that we're faced in, and why are we getting pegged with certain words when we are actually just trying to kind of claim our stake and do what we need to do. And I think another topic that we discussed heavily was the need, or the incessant need, to overcompensate. And why is that? Why do we need to overcompensate for what we do? Why don't we have the same sort of level playing field going into the workforce, being in the workforce, being subject matter experts, and knowing that, we've earned this right? Why do we constantly feel inadequate? And what can we do to change this and empower ourselves and each other in this journey? And it was fantastic because we had actually the most amount of men represented ever in this course at San Francisco campus for the first time. So it was so engaging to hear both sides and I saw eyes light up. And so we're really passionate about this sort of equality between the two genders, and that we're really not just talking about women and how we feel, but bringing men into the dialogue so they understand where we're coming from.
It is really interesting to think about all of the ways that we hold ourselves back and those perceived notions, that imposter syndrome, and how it affects us even when we're on the periphery, when we're not necessarily in the corporate world yet, but we're looking for those jobs. So it starts much earlier than we might expect.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, we can certainly think of many different advantages to having more women in business school and in the workforce in leadership positions, but wondered if the three of you could come up with any examples, any advantages that you think that we have, that we would all benefit from having more women in business school.
So all of them. I'll start. So I mean, I think for a lot of reasons, I think women in business and women attending business school is incredibly important. You know, today's market is very competitive, and so I think in order to remain competitive in the market and to really try to advance, it's important to not just have the credentials, but to have the knowledge and expertise and skills in order to be able to achieve those positions and to continue to climb the ladder. And when we talk about strategies, you know, one important piece, and I've written on this a bit, is how women have a tendency to mentor each other, and men have a tendency to sponsor each other. And I think what we need is more women to go to business school so that then they can achieve positions and sponsor each other by pulling each other up and helping each other get to that next step. So I think, you know, certainly that is the case. And then also I think in business school, there's a lot of opportunities that are presented, and certainly Rosey and Justine can speak to this, that give women the opportunity to network and to take risks and to try new things and to develop these skill sets that will really give them a competitive advantage when they go out into the marketplace. So we'd love to hear from Justine and Rosey on their experience in that.
Well, I just want to take something that you said and attest what you just brought apart in terms of business school, especially. I have an interesting statistic to kind of back up what you've just said, and it says in the United States alone, women exercise decision-making power of over $11.2 trillion. So that's 39% of the nation's investable assets. And women also represent the largest market opportunity in the world, according to Forbes. So interesting enough that if women are controlling that much buying power and spending power, they have to be equally represented in these companies and in corporations. And it does start with business school. We need to sort of have these dialogues and engage in these conversations, but we have to be in here and know what's happening. And then when we're getting hired on into the job market, this is where we can definitely lend our expertise. Like, who knows women better than women? So this conversation is really important to be had. And there's so much around this, so much research. And even globally, it's $20 trillion. Like, imagine that, right? If I could have just a small portion of that, I would be so happy. Well, maybe not, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think, you know, I think for me, the biggest thing that I left Hult, my MBA with was, you know, beyond the hard skills and stuff, was really just this better sense of confidence in myself. You know, business school was so much more than learning finance and accounting and improving those skills. It was really, you know, going to leadership classes, doing presentations. You know, it really helped boost that confidence for me. And, you know, it can be intimidating, I think, as a female, when you're one of the only women in the room, you know, at a board meeting or at a work meeting, and you're not in one of those, you know, executive or C-level positions. It feels intimidating. And that's something that I really left Hult with, I think, was just, you know, those presentation skills, leadership skills, and that really helped me have a lot more confidence when I'm in those situations now.
Excellent, and I'm so happy that you did touch on leadership and having the chance to take classes at Hult surrounding women in leadership. And and any advantages that you three would have to share regarding women in those C-level positions, or if it's a smaller company, just in those higher level positions where they're more of a decision maker and get to sit at the table.
Sure. So, I mean, I teach entrepreneurship at Hult, and Rosey took my class, and I think that entrepreneurship in particular is a really wonderful opportunity for women. One of the quickest ways the women are going to achieve the gender equality in pay is really when they start their own businesses and start paying themselves as they deserve to be paid. And I think in pursuing entrepreneurial ventures, it's a wonderful opportunity to, again, not just go out there and start your own business, but it's also an opportunity to pull more women up with you. And it's challenging. Having served both as an entrepreneur, I've run 3 startups, and now I teach it. I've gone to those investor pitches and pitched for my company, and it's quite challenging. The majority, I would say the vast majority of people I've ever pitched to were men. And so I think, again, it's an important experience. I think what business schools what business school and particularly Hult offers is the opportunity to really get a lot of practice at that process around entrepreneurship, from the Hult Prize, if you're interested in social entrepreneurship, to actually taking a course, to business challenges where you can really focus on cultivating your own ideas and putting together a business plan and then make that pitch. So I think as much as women can explore those types of opportunities around entrepreneurship, and perhaps take the leap to start their own business, will help women overall in industry advance and progress. And again, pull other women up with you as you climb that ladder.
And at Hult, you can actually go through the process of starting your own business if you would like, when you're choosing between either the startup track or the corporate track for the first 8 months of the program. So I would love to touch on that a little bit more. What are some ways that the school specifically works to empower women? From the very onset of looking into the school, applying to the school, we do have scholarships available for women in business. And there are also, once enrolled as a student, we have different courses that cater to not just women. As we have mentioned before, inclusion is incredibly important, but certainly classes discussing women in leadership roles and how females specifically can build up that leadership skill set as they move out of the MBA program or different master's programs into their next job or into their next company. And Tessa, you and I have spoken a little bit about different faculty research, and I understand that you actually are involved in faculty research at the school regarding gender equality and how it's worked into our pedagogy. Could you speak a little more to that?
Absolutely, and I think I actually have some colleagues who are joining the webinar and listening in, that I'm actually currently working on a piece of research with colleagues both here in the U.S. as well as in the UK and in the Netherlands, around innovative approaches to teaching about gender equality in the classroom. And we actually did some of this work in our classroom at Hult this year, facilitating a game around getting people to explore different types of scenarios and then to really discuss it as a team. And this is with both men and women that we played this game and experienced this innovative approach to teaching about this topic that really was able to get people to experience, feel emotions around these topics, and then to really discuss it. And it was fascinating to watch this happen in the classroom, and then to really get people's thoughts around, well, especially from the men's perspective, I never really, perhaps thought about how she might have felt in that situation, or, oh gosh, if this had happened to my sister or my mom, that would make me really feel bad. I never really thought about if it would, happen to my colleague as well. So it was really fascinating to see these topics discussed in the classroom, and the research that's being done by faculty at Hult on this topic in different areas, from gender equality and the ways we can teach it in the classroom to women entrepreneurship, women leadership around the world. It's really quite neat. It's really fascinating. But I also know that Justine and Rosey are both members of the Women in Business Club or alumni, so and they're doing some important work as well for the students.
Excellent. And that actually brings us to our next topics, which are the Women in Business Club and the Women in Business Conference. So starting with the Women in Business Club, I know, Rosey, you're currently the co-founder and the chapter head for the Gender Equality Club in San Francisco. Could you walk us through why you decided to change the name from formerly being Women in Business to then Gender Equality in Business?
Oh, yes, of course. So actually, it was a really interesting story. So when we had our club fair on campus, I was doing what I do best, which is running around campus trying to recruit a lot of the students to join the cause. And we were met with a lot of resistance, and obviously mostly from men who didn't understand the challenges or what they could do to further this cause. This, calling it Women in Business is fantastic, and it's definitely great for women to empower women. But I've always been a true believer that, the men have to join this, and we have to fight this cause together. We can't do this in isolation. We really won't get anywhere. And there's a lot of negative stigma against being called a feminist. So we didn't want it to be about feminism. And I think that's what sort of people were feeling. And you have to be mindful of the fact that people are coming from all parts of the world. So their ability to understand the challenges that women face is not necessarily the same in other parts of the world. And some were more gender intelligent, as we call it, and others were less. So, I have a board with 7 individuals, and collectively, so the way it is four guys and 3 girls. And so we had a pretty even balance. And the guys that were in the club were very, very passionate about the topic, given that their mothers, their sisters, and family members, or even their friends were powerful women, and they understood the challenges that they faced firsthand, and they really wanted to promote this cause. But we didn't want to leave anybody behind. So we had a board meeting, and we discussed this at length, and we came up with the Gender Equality and Leadership Club because we know that it really is about equality. We wanted that word to be in there, is that we want an equal playing field. And it's not because you're a woman do you get the leadership position, or vice versa. You don't get it because you're the female. It's the best person gets the job, and understanding what is the best, what women bring versus what men bring, and how to pair the two. And so we really went through this, and it was an exciting and very memorable experience for all of us. I don't think any one of us will ever forget it, but we're really proud of sort of that evolution here at Hult. And I was lucky enough to have the support of the dean and some of the faculty who really helped push the cause forward all year long. We just had our last, tomorrow is our last official club meeting and we're just excited. The dialogue will continue beyond my year here at Hult.
Do you have some alumni that are still involved in the club?
Yes, so we've had a few that have come in and out, and it's been more that we've been able to reach out to them, to ask them to either connect us with well-connected men and women that are passionate about this cause, and some of them, when they're on campus, have attended some of the panel interviews and the conversation discussions that we had here on campus.
Excellent. And Justine, as an alumna now, I know that when you were a student at Hult in San Francisco, you were also the president of the Women in Business Club. So I would love to hear a little bit about your experience and what was the goal of that club?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I remember when we were first starting it up, we sort of met the same pushback that Rosey did with men questioning joining and why we were doing this if it's only for women, and that, is that actually inclusive? And we actually decided to keep it as the Women in Business Club, because to myself and the other women that I was running the club with, I guess we think of feminism as the fight for equality. And I've always been a pretty strong advocate of equity to reach equality. When women are here and men are here, typically speaking, in business situations, we need equity to bring them to that equal playing field, right? We need that push. And I was, really happily surprised after we sort of gave our little talk on equality and the importance of it, and that you know, the huge benefits and the higher return on investment when you have a more diverse team and a more equitable team. We had a lot of men involved as well. And we ended up bringing in a few female founders and female VCs from Silicon Valley and from Vancouver, actually, to do some great talks. And it, you know, I think it was beneficial for the students, but it was also, you know, for me as the person being in contact with these founders and VCs and these, you know, great women doing things in sort of women or male dominated fields. It was great for my network and my learning, you know, even once I had graduated. So it was really, really worthwhile to get involved. I would recommend it to anyone considering.
Excellent. And could you share some more about the events that you all held? We will get to the Women in Business Conference, which is perhaps one of the biggest events that took place here on our Boston campus. But were there any other events that might have been a little smaller, networking opportunities, or bringing in certain panels or speakers?
Yeah, so Darren, we just had, I think one of my favorite, like a seminar panel that we had was with Professor Ted Ladd, who's one of our favorite professors here on the San Francisco campus, who came in with both his wife and his mother. Now he's a favorite of almost every student here. Just the charisma and the character, the charm that he brings into the classroom is unreal. And you'll know this with most of your professors when you get to Hult, that there's something very different about them, very special about them, and they really do care, and they will, the lessons that they give you will be beyond what any other business school, I truly believe, will give you. And so we brought him along, and he brought his mother and his wife, who are obviously two very strong and very important women in his life, and to really demonstrate the sort of his journey on how he didn't shy away from strong women. I mean, his mom was just an incredible soul who had gone through many challenges in her life, but actively involved in Wyoming, in the political community. And then his wife, who's an entrepreneur, but also involved in many charities and many boards as well, and how he naturally gravitated towards stronger women. And, you know, he threw out this, and I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, but, you know, his wife makes more money than him, and that's not something that he's shy about. He's more like, lucky me, my wife makes more money than I do. And so, you know, and just the way that they've both been able to lean in to their careers together, and that it takes two to tango, especially in the situation where you are fortunate enough to find a partner, and how you support both their career aspirations without feeling the need to sacrifice your own. So that was one of my absolute favorite events that we held on campus here.
And what a great way to finish the year too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other events that you remember from your year at Hult? Or Tessa, I know you're the faculty advisor now for the Women in Business Club here in Boston. So would you like to share a little about the Women in Business Conference that just took place?
Sure. So the Women in Business Conference, we have a very strong club on the Boston campus as well. It has several, I would say the majority of women who are on the Boston campus, I think, are part of the Women in Business Club. And we've done different kinds of events. The students have organized guest speakers to come in. We've done a branding event around how to create your own personal brand, how to network. And then it really culminated with this event, the Women in Business Conference, which was attended by several hundred people from outside of Hult as well as Hult students. And we brought in a series of speakers. We had 2 keynote speakers, and then we had a series of different panels that the participants of the conference could actually choose to attend, in topics such as leadership, you know, women working in different industries, social entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurship was a main theme of the conference. And what was also really wonderful about the conference, talking about the inclusive piece of this, was that the majority of the Hult students that really helped at the conference, so that, you know, helped navigate participants who came in, who ran our registration, were actually the men, the male students, and they all wore hot pink shirts. And they were there so that their female student colleagues could actually attend the conference or be part of the conference. And they were really there to be in the supportive role, as well as to listen and be part of the conference as well. And so it was really just this wonderful experience, and also a really wonderful opportunity to get a lot of we have strong women faculty who teach at Hult, who are part of our administration at Hult, and it gave them an opportunity also to participate, for us to share the research and the work that's being done here. So it was overall just a really fantastic event that we are looking forward to continuing, and will now, you know, hold as an annual event on the Boston campus and perhaps other campuses as well.
Amazing. And actually, Justine and Rosey, have you had a conference on your campuses as well? Or is that something that will probably be done in the future?
Yeah, we didn't this year. Sorry, go ahead, Justine.
No, we didn't have one my year, but that would be amazing to see, for sure.
Yeah, I'm kind of sad now hearing Tess. I wish we had one.
Well, it's an idea moving forward, especially for any of our future students who are tuning in. That is an amazing thing that has already been, has gotten off the ground here in Boston, but certainly the amazing thing about Hult and the network is that you can learn from others even when you're on different campuses. So this would be an amazing initiative to roll out on all of our campuses. And Tessa, you did speak a little bit to the gender equality and the male inclusion specifically for this event, the Women in Business Conference, but also just in general in business and in business school. What are some of the advantages of bringing men into this conversation?
Sure. I mean, I think, you know, kind of similar to what Justine and Rosey have both touched upon, you know, it's important that men are part of the conversation. I really loved what Justine just said around needing equity to achieve equality. And I think that the more that we have partners, both men and female male and female partners, to help women achieve this and to have a level of self-awareness, I think it's extraordinarily important to the cause of really advancing women and helping them to achieve the equity that's necessary in order to have that level of representation that we should have, both on corporate boards, with nonprofit boards, and kind of throughout every industry sector. So you know, again, I think there's different ways to think about approaching it. You know, I think Rosey's example of how they actually made this part of the mission of their club, and made this topic really important, I think is wonderful. I think also just from the experience that students at Hult get to have in the classroom, you know, when we talk about equality and diversity and inclusion, I mean, these all intersect, right? Just as your illustration does right there. So while we all have gender as a piece of our identity, we also have other parts of our identity, and they all kind of intersect. And so one thing that happens at Hult that I think is extraordinarily unique is that students work together in teams a lot, whether they, and I see Rosey and Justine nodding, whether they love it or they hate it. I think it's probably one of the most enriching experiences at Hult to be able to work on probably the most diverse team you'll ever work in your life, and to really work through challenges as well as to reap the rewards of being able to develop those cross-cultural skills and to work in teams and to kind of navigate those challenges. So I think that Hult provides that really unique environment for women and men to come together and not just bring their gender, but to bring all sorts of aspects of their culture to the table, and to really utilize that as a strength and as a tool for innovation and creativity and entrepreneurship. That in the end, I think all of the students at Hult and the graduates are so enriched by that whole experience. And we'd love to hear from Justine and Rosey as firsthand as students of Hult if that was the case for them.
Yeah, one thing that I really, really liked about Hult was that we not only had the opportunity to take, a women in leadership course, or, be involved in the Women in Business Club, but I can think of, and this is because this is something that is always on my radar and something I am passionate about, I can think of many classes that I took where gender equality and diversity became a part of the bigger conversation and the case studies we were doing. Everything from all of Olaf Groth's classes, there was always conversations about culture, inclusion, and gender. The organizational behavior courses really touched strongly on that, which I found very, very useful in terms of taking action towards diversity and inclusion. And even I took a finance class, a business valuation course, and we would analyze businesses' income statements and measure their success, but we would also then look at outside factors, and gender roles and cultural norms became a big part of the conversation. And I remember that because I would then be heavily involved in those conversations, probably trying to avoid the finance bit. But it was really, it was like this dynamic approach that included everyone in the conversation, and it made you see that gender equality and women in business isn't just this sort of one-off sectioned area of discussion. It's a part of everything and affects everything, and I really found that and really appreciated it at Hult.
And for me, similar to what Justine just said, it was, the group work was insane. And so you're in constant teams, or you're in one team for your module A, let's just say, and you don't know anybody, and you're coming from different parts of the world, and you've got the pressure of school and projects and deadlines, plus you're adjusting to potentially a new city or a new country, and men and women deal with stress very differently. So it's very interesting to see who I was at the beginning of the year and who I am today. And I think I'll tell this to everybody that I meet when I speak of Hult as now an almost alumni, T-1 day, but just Hult will break you and then build you back up. And it's just this group work that you're involved in that really, really challenges you to the core, but somehow, because we're human at our core, regardless of gender or race or what other way you want to segregate or isolate yourself or include yourself, you still have this need to be resilient and bounce back. And we're all fighters, and it really takes a special personality that applies to Hult, that comes to Hult, and then finishes the program at Hult, and especially the MBA program. I know there's probably some MIB and maybe some MIMs and other, I think we have a whole bunch of other programs being launched this year on this conversation today, but truly it's that group work and knowing, and Justine can attest to this, coming from Toronto, I think I thought I had that badge of multiculturalism on me. I'd figured it out. And then when I was sort of put to the test, I was like, uh-oh, I really don't think I have it. And I think now, though, like I said, one day away from my last class, I can honestly say that I am a completely different person and a much better person when it comes to dealing with sort of these imbalances in society that we will be up against, both obviously in school and now in the workforce for the rest of our lives. So thank you, Hult.
Oh. And when you navigate this, your career path, or also going through graduate programs, going through business school, it's so nice to be able to have someone to bounce ideas off of and receive their advice and look at what they've gone through and perhaps learn from it before having to do that yourself. So do any of you have mentors, or are you a mentor for someone else? And could you share a little about that experience and why it's important to have someone to help you through this journey?
I have a really great mentor story, which I wouldn't have been able to do my MBA without. And I think, really showed me the importance of having a mentor. So when I was doing my startup Girls Globe, we ended up working very closely with Johnson & Johnson CSR team and partnered with them and got funding through them and really worked more in partnership with them for a while. And one of the executives on the CSR team I worked with a lot and really enjoyed working with. She was a female with an MBA, older than me, so great, a great person to look up to. I really respected her and enjoyed working with her. And we, once I moved on from that into other roles, I stayed in touch with her. She was great to bounce ideas off of. And when I started thinking of going to business school, she was the first person I reached out to talk about, the pros and cons and what kind of program I should be looking for and all of these things. And then I found out that I got into Hult and I was ready to take out my student loan. And my father, who was going to co-sign my loan, passed away suddenly. And suddenly I had no one to co-sign for me and thought I was not going to be able to go anymore. And this woman who had been my mentor and friend and colleague now for years stepped up and co-signed my loan, no questions asked. During business school, I would call her and cry to her and also bounce ideas off of her. She had gone through it as well. She knew it could be stressful and very challenging at times. And then after graduating, we're still in touch. She's helping me now navigate the corporate world. And, it's really, having that completely changed my experience. It made it possible. And beyond the support of helping me get to business school, it was really the most valuable thing has been her presence and her input and, learning through her. So it's definitely, if there's someone you want to be your mentor or, I think that the lesson is to not be afraid to ask and to stay in touch with people and build those networks, because that's what really, I think, gets you through and how you grow and learn at the end of the day.
What an incredible example of a mentor. That's amazing that you have that person in your life and value that relationship to continue it through well beyond your career, probably. Any other examples?
I would just add, I think mentorship, as I mentioned at the top of the webinar, is extraordinarily important. I think that in general, when I work with students, I always encourage that, networking is huge, right? I mean, I think in developing your network is one of the most important things you can do from the second you graduate from undergrad through your professional experience, through your business education, business school experience, and beyond. And I always suggest to students to really look for people who are in the job they want in 5 years, and to go out and be aggressive and ask for those informational interviews and meet with them and network. But what I also think is really important about the word mentorship is that it really should intend to end up being sponsorship. And I think that, again, women are really good at commiserating and consoling and supporting one another, but where sometimes I think we fall down is the opportunity to actually sponsor one another and bring each other up with us as we move forward or move up the ladder. And historically, men do this very, very well, and I think women have to get more aggressive as they move up the ladder to identify strong women that are right behind them and to give them the opportunities as well, because what we need in businesses is diversity, and we need women to, as they move up, to bring more women with them, so that, again, we have that diverse set of voices that can help create strategy and do the good work of the company. So again, I think mentorship is a great word, and I love that word, but I also think sponsorship is a word that women have to learn and to think about very intentionally and to not just when they're sponsored to think about, okay, now who can I sponsor and bring up with me as I progress in my career.
Excellent. And yeah, continuing that, and not just those who want to find mentors or sponsors looking for that, but also people looking down at the organization and seeing who is someone who they could really lead through that. Rosey, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, I really like what you said, Tess, because I'm just thinking I've had a few wonderful, wonderful mentors over the years, especially back in Toronto from work. And I really like what you said about sponsorship, because I've been able to call them and sort of freak out and have a moment and, like, you know, as they say, like, and then cry it out and then put lipstick on and walk back out there and be the best that you can be. And that's been great. But you're right in terms of sponsorship. I was just trying to think, my last mentor, she's phenomenal, but you know, she did have some hesitations about me going to grad school and leaving a promising career in Toronto. And sometimes you do have to watch that. We don't necessarily do that. We don't, you know, I need to go home and reflect. Like when I was a mentor, I am a mentor to she's like a family friend who's got a very similar personality to me. So we've sort of connected and stayed in touch. But am I being a sponsor to her? Am I truly bringing her up? That's really like food for thought. And I hope I've done that, and I'm not sort of playing my own projecting my own stereotypes and biases on them, and that I'm bringing her along on her own journey, not my own. So thank you so much for that. I really, wow, I need to go home and think about this tonight.
And things to continue the conversation. There's a lot of resources out there. There's so many different opportunities to get involved, even if you're not enrolled in school or if there's not something within your own company. There's a lot of different organizations around the globe. And I have some here and also some great reads. I think it's really important just to stay informed and to be on top of the news, but also to read books that inspire you. Have you three are you involved in any other organizations or attended any other conferences or have advice on what we could be reading?
So I actually, being in San Francisco and being at Hult, I was taught the art of networking, and I got lucky enough to attend one of Sheryl Sandberg's lean-in ceremonies. So I actually got to meet her and shake her hand and take a picture with her, which is super cool. And so I do follow a lot of what she says, and in lean-in, and it was really great because we've done a lot of lean-in circles in my previous roles. But I think the books that she's done after that, since then, especially after losing her husband, I forgot the name of her most recent book, but that one's really one that I would urge people to read and really kind of delve deeper and see what that means to them. There's so much out there. There's so much great literature, both written by men and women, again, that really speak to this topic. And then I think there's a conference, the Better Men Conference. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that. And it's on the same thing of men supporting women in this cause. So there's a lot of things happening, especially if you come out in San Francisco. The Bay Area is filled with excited and enthusiastic people that are here to promote the cause.
Yeah, I like to, I follow a lot of different blogs online. A lot are more global in scope because that's my interest for women in business. I'd be happy to send some links, but I like the digital resources because they're updated weekly. There's new posts almost every day, and you're kind of getting the scoop on what's going on, and you can search, you know, your industry keywords too to see what's trending and what people are talking about, you know, and to stay on top of it.
The only thing I would just add is that beyond what's here on this slide is when you move to a city, whether it's Boston or San Francisco or London or Shanghai, that there's tons of networking opportunities within that city. And your first week or two on the ground, you should really explore what those options are. So for instance, in Boston, we have the Mass Conference for Women, which is a really fantastic opportunity for women. And there's different kind of tiers. If you don't have a lot of money, you just want to go the first night, it's not that much money, but you get to see some really fantastic speakers. You get to do tons of networking. There's EY, which is a great entrepreneurs organization, and they have the Women in Leadership Summit. And there's chapters in every city. So I think the important thing to keep in mind is to get outside of the building when you decide to attend business school, to go into the city, to identify 2 or 3 networking groups that you can connect with on a weekly or biweekly basis, and to really just make that a habit, get together with some friends and hold each other accountable to attend these networking events. And to get involved in the city that you're living in. There's lots of support for women in business and entrepreneurship in San Francisco and Boston, all these great cities. So to get out there and explore it, and also lean on ask your professors, because all of them are part of these organizations. They sit on boards and so forth. So it's important to tap into that resource as well.
That's a great idea. Definitely connect with everyone who's been in the city for some time and can point you in the right direction and introduce you to the right people. So in the interest of time, I would love to open it up to our audience here and ask if they have any questions. I already see that we have a couple that have come through. So our first question is from a person who is interested in applying for business school, so still in the very early stages of this process, and will be in the job market again in a few years. So do you 3 have any tips, any concrete tips that you can offer to be successful as an MBA applicant and as a job seeker?
I think it took me a while to find the right job for me after business school. And I think, during the MBA, really tried to challenge myself and focus on classes in finance and stuff, because I had never done that before, which I'm happy I did. But I also think I focused sometimes too heavily on the book side of things. So I would definitely say throughout the year, keep on top of your resume, keep working on it, meet with your career advisor, go to these networking events, conferences as well. I never once paid to attend a conference during the MBA. Every single time I found something I wanted to go to, I would reach out to, I think it was my career advisor or the dean even, and I would always somehow end up getting, free access to these sometimes very expensive conferences. So keeping that networking going and applying for jobs and internships and even just volunteering early on, I think can really make a big difference in terms of when you finish school and suddenly having nothing on and having to start applying and stuff.
And I think that proactive approach can also be applied to the application process. I think it's great once you're in the MBA to use all the resources that are available to you. But as an applicant, there's often there's times to get to meet people in the enrollment team for the school that you're interested in, and speak to people one-on-one, even connect with alumni who have been through the program. So I think it's great to take that approach from a very early stage, even as you're just starting to research schools.
Yeah, I think I just want to mention something that we haven't touched upon, but Hult is a huge advocate of the growth mindset. And so, really, like I said, I'm at the end of the journey, and you get it sort of drilled in you in the beginning in immersion and maybe Mod A, but then you sort of let it be and let it sort of sit and do its thing in your own psyche. And so if you can start that process early, because I know I knew it high level, but I think now that I'm here and there's a lot of stuff you can read, YouTube, TED Talks about the growth mindset. But if you can start that process today about really understanding that nothing is off limits for you, and that you can learn any sort of skill, you can speak to anybody. You can really, we have a huge emphasis here on soft skills. So, some people come from a technical background, but then feel like they don't understand the soft skill part of it, or vice versa. But everything is within your ability to do so. So, open your mind and really try to understand and nourish this growth mindset that will make you a very successful MBA, and then obviously applies right into the workforce. That's it. If you believe you can do it and you have that sort of innate ability to push past those challenges and the fears and the doubts, you'll definitely be it. And again, it's growth mindset, growth mindset, growth mindset. I need a tattoo that says growth mindset.
I'm so happy you brought it up, Rosey. You're right. That is something that a lot of students will learn. Well, all students will learn a lot about when they're enrolled at Hult. And I remember hearing a lot of my professors discuss growth mindset, but going back to it as someone who's been out of the program for a few years now and just having to remind myself. So a tattoo does sound like a good approach. And do you three have any advice for someone coming from a non-traditional professional background who is considering applying to an MBA?
I would love to, I don't know if there's a way I can get in touch with this person who asked this question. I came from a very non-traditional background prior to MBA. I was doing a lot like international nonprofits, working a lot in sub-Saharan Africa. If this is sort of what you mean, I don't know if I can reach out to this person or get in touch, but I would be happy to talk about, this further, because I was definitely nervous and had a lot of questions coming into this totally different structure and setting, for sure.
That's amazing, Justine. If you would be willing to, the attendees are shown as anonymous here on our end, but if you just wanted to share, we can always follow up with your contact details.
Sorry, go ahead, Tess.
Oh, sorry. I would just add. Having come from healthcare, I've actually done a lot of research looking at non-traditional business people or non-traditional professions going into business and entrepreneurship. And I think one of the great things about Hult is that there are different programs. So whether it's your MBA program or the Master's in International Business or International Marketing or Finance, there's different programs that I think would be a great fit for someone who doesn't feel as confident. Perhaps they don't have a lot of business experience or a strong business background and business education. There's different programs that might be a good fit for them. And so again, I think the important thing to do when you're considering going to business school is to visit, to meet with people, meet with professors, meet with the dean, meet with students or alumni, and to listen to their experience. A lot of the events I know in Boston are put on Eventbrite. We've had actually prospective students see the Eventbrite and show up to our personal branding workshops and other events and come up to me and ask me questions. I mean, if you're interested in exploring a business education, especially if you have a non-traditional profession that's not traditionally business, definitely, reach out to alumni like Justine and just speak with them and hear about their experience, because I do think that there's a variety of different options and that there's lots of opportunity. And so you'll find the right fit for you if you kind of open yourself up to that, have a growth mindset, and speak with people about it.
And what are your thoughts on cross-gender mentorship or sponsorship?
I'm all for it. I just think, again, I think we need to break down these barriers and not have not be guided by gender or any other sort of stereotypes. No one person can teach you everything in life. And so you really need to diversify your portfolio when it comes to investments. And the same applies to your mentors, because everybody will teach you something different, both men and women, different races, different ethnicities. But one thing I just want to say about the non-traditional background, my only thing is please apply. Please, 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 please apply. We have more to gain from you and learn from you than everybody else who's engineers and business people in there. There's so much dialogue to be had, and you don't understand how valuable your background, your expertise, the way that you think, really fosters that conversation. Tessa, you can speak to this. When you have those individuals with a different perspective, how much the classroom lights up, and the discussion and the dialogue just takes a new sort of angle that you didn't even anticipate. And those are the people that really change the way we think about how business is done. So sorry, I just had to say that because I felt very powerful and passionate about that.
Rosey, I'm happy you shared that because we are incredibly diverse, but most people just think of that in terms of the nationalities amongst our student body, but we actually have a great range of industries that are represented by our incoming students and then by our graduates as alumni. So that's something that I completely agree. It really enriches the discussion. It challenges your viewpoints, which just helps that 1 year, that intensive year, be that much more of an opportunity to push yourself and to grow.
Absolutely.
Great, and let's see, we did talk about how gender equality needs to be something that permeates all aspects of an organization. And one person who has signed on and is listening was wondering if there are any policies that we could put into place to move organizations toward gender equality.
I can take this.
Sure, go ahead, Rosey.
I'm passionate about this. I think depending on where your organization is at, I think that you just need to get somebody to start that dialogue and then watch it spread like wildfire. You know, I work for a large bank in Toronto, and so they had done a lot of work on it. But even despite the fact that there's been so much work and they have a lot of prominent women in the C-suite level, there's still a lot of dialogue to be had, and there's a lot of stuff that needs to. And as the millennials come in, and as well as, and you're talking about gender and age gap and cultural shifts, you really need to know where your organization is at. So I really believe that just start the conversation. Just walk up to somebody and say, "Hey, what are your thoughts on this?" And then watch how that sort of can really change the way people start looking. And there's so much creativity, and I love the one thing about the millennials is that they are so creative and they have these awesome dimensions on how to approach this topic. And I don't have the answer, but I think just start talking, see what happens.
The only thing I would add is that I do believe that policy can help to build the representation. I think even with the very best of intentions, many of us have subconscious biases, and we have a tendency to gravitate towards people that are like us, that we're comfortable with, that we can easily have a conversation with. And rarely, it takes a real leader to really identify an opportunity to say, I need someone to challenge me on a regular basis, because with that challenge can spawn new creativity, innovation, and growth. And so, what these policies do is really get us to be intentional and saying, if this is an important piece that the company needs to consider or the organization needs to consider in order to continue to advance that representation of women, racial, ethnic minorities, and other folks to create that diverse leadership team, which will again advance the organization as it relates to innovation and creativity. So I do believe in the research that supports these kinds of policies, which could help move organizations forward.
Yeah, I'm a really big advocate as well in affirmative action, like I said about equity towards equality. And I think a great example that I always reference is in Rwanda, the parliament is run majority by women. And this is because after the genocide that happened there, the government put in a gender quota that 30% of members of parliament had to be women. And what ended up happening is that the country voted in 54% of members of parliament as women. So sometimes that affirmative action or that step actually shows goes beyond, and sometimes you just need some women in leadership, and you need those role models and those people to take the first step, and then it kind of becomes a snowball effect.
Well, I want to thank you all so much for your insights today. This is unfortunately all the time that we have, but I really appreciate you sharing your experiences both at Hult and in your careers. And I just from the response that we've gotten here through the people that have joined us this evening, I know that it was incredibly well received. And many of them have asked if they can reach out to you all. So did want to see first if you would be open to sharing your contact details, an email or a LinkedIn. We'd be happy to share that with people in an email following the webinar.
Awesome, yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
Excellent. Well, as you've all said, it's just starting the discussion. So I really hope that this offered a platform for people to start thinking about these things. And as an international business school, we are always striving to make sure that women feel that they are empowered and that they can have a positive experience, not just here at Hult, but beyond in their careers. So thank you again so much for taking the time out of your evenings to share all of these thoughts with us. And we will be following up with all of you who have joined with an email with a link to the webinar so that you can tune back in and listen to all of these things that these three women have shared and also their contact details. So thank you again, everyone. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Until next time.
Awesome. Have a great night, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.